way to get me to do something is tell me not to. And I'm just an a-hole like that.
The Georgia Virtue presents the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast.
This is episode 257. I'm Dave Roberts. With me is writer, journalist, dog mom, the smart and stacked Christian cutie, Jessica Szilagyi.
Thanks so much for that, Dave.
Not my words.
No. Thank God for that, too.
Well, I'm not saying I disagree with anything. Just that's an odd position to be in, isn't it?
Yeah.
If I say I disagree, I'm an a-hole. If I say I agree, I'm a creeper. So
it's okay. It's okay to disagree. It's okay. Yeah, so Dave sent me a Substack newsletter thing from this guy who goes by Kevin H. of the Cobb Way Sentinel. And he basically just aggregates content and rebundles it in a way that is supposed to be enticing, I guess. And he spent a good amount of time talking about my looks and my body, and then said, congrats. She helped nab a wayward warden in Tattnall County. So,
which you did?
I don't know if I did. I mean, I don't know if I had anything to do with it. I just was reporting on all of it, but he said it cuts like a knife.
Which means he listens to the show.
And refers to cheesecake journalist.
I don't know if that's supposed to be a compliment or not.
I don't either. I don't,
I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but the fact that he made the exact same corny pun that I did on the name Bryan Adams. I mean, he could have given me something, the fat and dashing Dave Roberts.
Well, maybe. And I'm not subscribed, so, this doesn't mean anything, but maybe you need to subscribe to a Substack because it said news, gossip, rumors, humor, and loathing in Cobb County, Georgia. So perhaps you just need to make yourself more known to him.
Oh, yeah, I'll pass. I hate to have to hear what he says about me if you're the cheesecake journalist. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that was meant to be a compliment about your looks, that you're a treat, or if it's an insult that about cheesy journalism. I have no idea.
Yes, but the way he writes, I don't care. So,
and I wasn't really looking for that. I was looking for another story, and I popped your name in because I was going to go through your stories for the show, and that thing popped up, and I laughed so hard, so I sent it to you and Eric.
Kevin H. Thank you.
But I am remiss. This week we have Dr. Cool's cancellation, checking ID for an addictomy, not weed restrictions, and the death of Fun Bill. And if we get to it, pants ablaze. So how was your week?
It was better than yours. Want to talk about it?
Yeah. So right after we recorded, within hours, you and I got a video sent to us, and it was of a Paulding County deputy. I don't even know what the wrestling move is. I've heard body slam, I've heard suplex or whatever, but what had happened was, all right. So this guy's walking down the road. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. It's still dark. This is March of last year. He matches the description, more or less, of somebody who had been breaking into cars. So Deputy McMasters, who I don't know, not that I've never run into him, just because It's more than possible that he and I have interacted before, but I don't know him. Stops this guy, and right off the bat is fairly combative, stopping this guy. So much so that when you watch the video, and I'm sure many of our listeners have seen the video, stops him. He's walking down the road. He's got a hoodie on. That's about the only description you get is he's a white guy with a hoodie, which is not the best description for stopping somebody. But stops him, and the guy's shocked. First thing he's got to do is pull an earbud out to hear what the deputy's saying.
Because it's like 6 in the morning.
Yeah. And the deputy immediately is detaining. I'm detaining you. It never tells him why. The thing was handled, I think, poorly from the beginning. Doesn't say, "Excuse me, sir, you happen to match the description of somebody who is breaking into some vehicles. Can I talk to you?" None of that. Just says, "I'm detaining you," and gets him on the hood of the car and was taking his backpack off of him. The guy stands up, takes his hands off the car, never makes, in my opinion, an aggressive move. And Big Masters picks him up and slams him on the pavement, cracking the guy's skull, breaking his collarbone. He was reportedly in the hospital for 9 days after that. Charged the guy with obstruction. He was not the person they were looking for. Apparently in the extended version that includes the body cams and all that stuff, which I haven't seen, and honestly, I'm not going to watch. He continues to taunt this guy when he's got blood coming out of his ears. They review the surveillance video of the guy who was casing and breaking into cars, and the person that was stopped had work boots on. And the person that they were looking for had like neon colored shoes. It's March. It's still chilly outside at that hour. Not that we would know anything about that the last week of February we've had. That's been 80-something degrees. But he had reason to have a hoodie on. It's chilly out. It's March. It's before the sun really comes up. And the story gets worse from there. So on the last show, I talked about taking a sheet cake over to the sheriff's department and getting a picture with the chief deputy and all that stuff. Well, the sheriff's department put that on their page, and then the video dropped.
As they often do with, that's pretty common for when somebody donates any type of food or brings treats or something. Most sheriff's offices will post about it. So it's not like you got special treatment on that.
Right. Yeah. That's a thank you. And again, this is something that was started by Kirsten Davis. And she actually said something on the press release that I had to drop. I guess I can't get you for Cookies for Cops next year. But so from that post, I don't know what you call them, social justice warriors or keyboard commandos, came after my company, came after Dr. Cool, was saying, don't do business with him. I hope you got a business. They support police brutality, and then posting the video on, and I'm not very good on social media for Dr. Cool, so I don't have a whole lot of posts, but they started flooding my posts with stuff. So that's what led to me dropping a press release on it. I said the same thing I'll say here, which is I support law enforcement. 99% of the police that are out there are in it for the right reason. But you do have that 1% of people who are on a power trip. McMasters has the nickname, apparently, of McTaser, because he is quick to go to less than lethal on folks. He's also not exactly svelte anymore. So The guy they stopped is maybe 150 pounds. The Deputy McMaster's pushing 300. So he's wrestling well below his weight class here. I don't know if he's so quick to use a taser and physical stuff because he just doesn't want to run because it seems like exercise. And look, the things they say on the sheriff's Facebook page, fine. But they decided that Dr. Cool needed to be canceled.
They did. And it happened quite quickly. It did.
You and I were unaware of the video when we recorded last week. I hadn't seen it. I think Matt Lowe sent it to us sometime the afternoon of the day we recorded. We're like, oh hell.
And someone else sent it to me via email, but I had kind of checked out for the day, and I was like super, I don't live near there. I wasn't watching TV, and I wasn't checking social media. So for all intents and purposes, I was off the grid.
Yeah. And I don't typically tune into the 5 o'clock news, to see what's going on. I did last week, I think it was Monday, tape the 5 o'clock news on Channel 2, ABC, because they were doing something on Glock switches. And I know somebody used to make them legally and sold them to police departments and militaries around the world. So I was curious. So I taped that show. And as I'm fast forwarding through all the BS that is local news, I see a guy going live from Paulding County. I was like, oh, hell. And I will say Paulding County has poorly handled this from the get-go. This has been very poorly handled.
Maybe one of the worst post-use of force handlings I've ever seen, truthfully.
Right. We don't hear anything from them. It happened in March of 2022. So we're talking 11 months later. They only made a public statement once the video became public. According to Channel 2, the story that I saw, McMaster's was disciplined, but it was for his language. Mm-hmm. He continued, apparently he continued to call the guy names and taunt him and everything else, even after his skull is cracked and he's in handcuffs in the back of the car waiting for an ambulance. He continued to taunt the guy. Why are you crying? You're older than I am, and stuff like that. So leadership was aware of the video and got him gave him a letter of reprimand for his language being inappropriate. Not for cracking the dude's skull. So we fast forward to February 2023. The video gets released, and now the sheriff's office is playing catch up, releasing a statement which, for 80% of that statement, was perfect.
Until the end.
Then they get to the end, it's tough because the people who are in charge of there are my friends. I like and respect Sheriff Gullidge, Chad Hunton, who's in the picture with me, who's a super great guy, who's the chief deputy, the public information officer, Ashley Henson, super good guy. I've known these guys for years. In fact, Chad sits on the Shepherd's Rest board with me. But I don't know when this decision was made. But I've said many times, the crime is never as bad as the cover-up. I said that about Watergate. Watergate as the break-in scandal really wasn't the story. It was the cover-up. Had they just come out and said, those operatives, yes, they were working on the re-election campaign. They were not working under our direction, and hanging them out to dry, it'd have been done with, and Nixon would have finished out his second term. Same thing's true here. Had they put Deputy Diabetes on administrative leave and immediately referred to the GBI, it would have been over and done with. But they didn't.
But even if they hadn't done that, what they did after it became public has just been abysmal.
It really is. I mean, Ashley Henson, who's the public information officer. Now, I don't know how edited the clip was that I saw on that news clip, but he said he was not compliant. And while technically that may be true because he did stand up after he was told to put his hands on the car, the reaction was beyond anything that I've seen with legitimate law enforcement. Generally speaking, when we see videos like this of stopping somebody who's a suspect, somebody you want to talk to, you put your lights on, which McFaddy did, and you go up and you talk to him. Hey, man, can I talk to you for a minute? You happen to match the description of somebody we're looking for. Can I talk to you for a minute? Make sure you're not him. And go from there and explain why you're stopping him. Explain that you happen to look like the guy, and we can talk from there. But that's not what McMasters did. He immediately grabs the guy and starts treating him like he's guilty. And it never explains why he's detaining him. I'm detaining you. Guy asks why. I'm on my way to work. Again, this is 6:00 in the morning. It's the time when school buses are on the road. It's the time, it's the time when people go to work. And it's something that Chad Hunt and I talked about when I was presenting the cake that I've caught so much hell over, is using your head and your mouth in avoiding conflict. And I think this wouldn't be anything but a day where he was 10 minutes late for work had McMasters just said, "This is why I'm stopping you. I'm going to detain you for a minute just so I can clear you," and then that would have been fine. But McMasters from the beginning of that video is confrontational. And I don't think he has the temperament for law enforcement. Do I think he meant to crack the dude's bean? No. I don't.
He meant to throw his weight around, quite literally. But that's it.
And yeah, I've fielded dozens of private messages onto the Dr. Cool Facebook account. I'm not even addressing anything on the sheriff's page with the post on there. And look, to the credit of Ashley Henson and Chad Hunton, they both, I've spoken to both of them, and they're both like, "Man, I'm sorry this is falling out on you, and do you want me to take it down?" And at this point, I'm like, screw them.
Well, at this point too, it doesn't do anything. Then I think it would look worse. You didn't do anything wrong, so.
Yeah, and look, I'm not going to bow to the cancel culture. Way to get me to do something is tell me not to. And I'm just an a-hole like that. So the more people push, the more I'm like, no, I'm not telling them to take it down. I have cleaned up the comments on every other post on Dr. Cool's page besides the post with the press release. And if they want to make comments on the press release, fine. But these comments are coming from people who don't even live in Georgia.
Well, it's like when I found myself in a pickle with Officer TikTok in Guyton, and all of the hating comments and racist, vile comments were coming from at least 100 miles away. not one person who regularly reads the site or in your case would use your services.
Had a guy from North Florida say he'd never use me again. Well, okay. And somebody from Ohio saying he'd never use us. Okay. And look, Dr. Cool has not been financially hurt by this. It's a tremendous pain in the ass to even have to address it. And look, I can say, without compromising integrity, that yes, I support the vast majority of law enforcement that go out and do their jobs with a servant's heart. And I will continue as long as I have a voice to speak out when they screw up. Whether it's the GDC or it's the sheriff's office that threw the guy in the freezer out in Alabama. So when they screw up, we hold them accountable.
The suggestion, though, that you should be held accountable for, I mean, I understand, like, all you did was a good deed at the wrong time. And if we all were held accountable for helping or caring or donating to people at the wrong time, or before, the wrong time being before they did something wrong, we would all be canceled.
Yeah, it was unfortunate timing for me. And look, I don't want them to take the post down or anything else. And Kirsten actually said something on my page. I guess I can't get you for Cookies for Cops next year. No, I absolutely will do it again. Absolutely. It was just something nice, just something nice to do. It's just an appreciation because look, in Paulding County, we don't pay as much as Cobb. We don't. There are a lot of places that somebody who's post-certified can go and make more money. The difference with what we have out here is generally a public that supports law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So if you take a job working for Atlanta, 90% of the people that you run into, if you're not in Buckhead or one of the nice places, already doesn't trust you. Out here, it's completely the opposite. We have 10% of people who are disgruntled and hate cops for being cops, but 90% of the people generally are the guys who will, I see it all the time, we'll see an officer in line at Wendy's, will pay for his meal or something like that, because we're that kind of community.
Well, and the argument immediately jumps to, well, all the cops who didn't say anything about him they're in the wrong. And to that, I would say this. The attorneys in the case did not even get the video for almost a year through the discovery process. So none of us would have been able to get the video unless it was leaked from a person who worked in the solicitor's office or a person who worked in the sheriff's office and had access to it. Like, it would have just been unfounded claims of something happening and having no proof to back it up. So while I can understand the sentiment, there's nothing they could have done that would have accelerated the process, because even the guy who was thrown around and is now suing the county didn't have any of that content until right before it came out.
Yeah, I do want to clear one thing up of something that's been circulated around social media, this idea that, all right, he was charged with obstruction. I think the charge is bogus, but he's charged with obstruction of a police officer. The charges were never dropped. There's an accusation that the charges were dropped until he filed a lawsuit and then they picked him back up. That's not what happened. That's absolutely not what happened. It's in our new state court with the solicitor who's in a new office. The charges were absolutely never dropped. So I got that from the public information officer. Before I relay any information, I like to independently verify. I had heard that was the case from people who are around the office, but not from the office. So I got it verified from Ashley Henson that that's absolutely not true. Do I wish that the office had handled it better? Absolutely. Absolutely. And McMaster's is off the road now. He's on desk duty, but that probably should
probably where he belongs. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean,
he's the kind of guy that you put at a courthouse or in an administrative duty and where it's a little less.
He's the kind of guy you put in Weight Watchers.
Well, I'm just saying if they're not going to fire him, they need to limit his interaction with the public because it's not,
Well, yeah, he doesn't have temperament for it. And I honestly, I don't want him working with inmates either.
Right.
If that's his go-to move.
Or serving warrants.
Now, I don't know if I said the best comment I saw. Now, look, if you're going to insult me, make it funny. Is after seeing Chad and me together, they said they should be eating Valentine's Day salads instead of cake. That's funny. Mm-hmm. That's objectively. If you're going to make fun of me, make it funny. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I call myself fat all the time. And look, when I call McMaster's fat, trust me, if I call somebody fat, they're fat. I'm not saying that McMaster should be thrown in jail and never see the light of day again, but he should be held responsible for his actions. And of course, people are calling for suspending, are looking for a way to get out of his qualified immunity, and which I don't think they will. Also, when you're filing a lawsuit, you go after the deepest pockets. The deepest pockets lie with the county, not with this road deputy. Well, people are out for blood. They want his life ruined forever.
They are. And if, the GBI very well may make all the decisions for the sheriff's office and leave them no choice but to terminate him. We don't know what's going to happen. The GBI is unpredictable in that sense because they are so different in different offices around the state. They're also a little bit political in some offices more than others, and with that outcry, you just never know. But they may make a decision that makes all of the rest of the decisions for Gary Gullidge. But if they don't, I think that the sheriff's office is going to have a really hard time restoring public trust.
I agree. And here's the thing. When you look at the entire body of work of Gary Gullidge, what he has done for the county has been outstanding. And one of my personal things that I talk about with Gary Gullidge is he took them out of BDUs, out of fatigues, and put them in uniforms because he wanted, outside of SWAT and dog handlers, but he put them in uniforms and button downs because he wanted his deputies to be easily identified as somebody who's here to help. Mm-hmm. He didn't want a private police force or private military force. He wanted his deputies, again, outside of SWAT, outside of dog handlers, to look professional and look like somebody who's there to help. He's done an outstanding job of that. He's done even to the point where, lead by example. There was a video of Gary himself stopping and putting lights on and helping someone change a tire. And with that example, we find that our deputies don't just drive past somebody trying to change a tire, but put lights on behind them so nobody hits them, and render aid. And overall, the body of work for Gary Gullidge is outstanding. I do not like the way his office has handled this particular situation. I don't know what in the end will if this will damage his legacy. And we gave, and I say we as a community, gave Gary the jail that we needed because it was him. Because we trusted him as a proper steward of the taxpayers' money. And I was one of the loudest people stumping for it because we had to have a new jail. The old jail was so outdated. It was the facilities were falling apart. It was never meant to last as long as it did. So we had to have this new jail. But he wanted it to be a bond referendum. He wanted it to be on the ballot. And he didn't want the Board of Commissioners signing off on it by themselves. He wanted the people to be able to say, we're going to give you this new facility. And that's what we did, is we did it because of the reputation that Gary Gullidge has in this community. And I tell you, as a man, I respect the hell out of Gary Gullidge and his leadership core that I've gotten to know the last, I don't know, 8-9 years is his example of being a public servant really made its way down the chain of command.
Yeah. I don't know.
But,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but we're way too long on why Dave sucks and his company should be shut down. Mm-hmm. So we have the dichotomy of parental decision versus the state prohibition.
Yeah, so show star, at least for this legislative session, Cardin Summers, we've talked about him last week, the senator from Cordele, has pushed or dropped a bill, and it had a hearing last week on something that, as I was pulling the article on it, I was like, this is a super interesting question. So basically, the short of the bill, the summary, is that so it's Senate Bill 140, but what?
Yeah, it's prohibiting transitioning, which, okay, transgenderism, making, codifying
sexual reassignment surgeries.
Yeah, sex changes to people who are 18 plus.
Under.
Or it's regulating under that they want you to at least be an adult before you make the decision to.
Right. So they want to bar parents from making these decisions for kids because, there's this whole argument of whether or not parents are forcing ideas upon a kid, and then the kid gets a little bit older and was like, well, I was just experimenting with my thoughts. I wasn't really sure, but now I'm, halfway in between this or whatever. So they would still be able to prescribe the medicines that block puberty, which, I don't want to get off in the weeds about that because that's very different than a sexual reassignment surgery. But I think it's an interesting approach because they call it the do no harm approach. And while I think they're missing an important step here, which is if you want to bar parents from doing this, shouldn't you make, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but in the interest of, streamlining the logic, shouldn't you make sexual reassignment surgeries illegal? Like make it a crime, like a child abuse, an act of child abuse, or child cruelty, so that you have a reason to stop a parent from doing something. Because we say you can't leave your kid home alone because it's neglect or abuse, or you can't starve them because it's neglect and abuse, understandably. But otherwise, you're just usurping a decision, which I am, vehemently opposed to, but you're usurping a decision of a parent over a child, which is essentially their property. I mean, for lack of a better word, like the parent is supposed to have autonomy over their child, not the state.
Well, there's also the psychologists that tell parents that if you don't go along with this, they're going to commit suicide.
Sure, but the psychologist doesn't come into any of this. So
no, I agree, but I agree.
The parent is the one on the hook. So shouldn't you make it some sort of offense for the? Also, if you follow me on Facebook, you know that I've had a problem with roosters and chickens in my yard lately. If you hear that cockadoodle doing, the damn rooster is back in the yard. Not my rooster. Anyway, I apologize.
There's a joke in there somewhere.
Yeah, there's lots of jokes, but I'm not going to get into them right now, especially on this subject matter. But I feel like they're just really
the rooster removal bill.
Yeah, I feel like they're really just jumping the gun here. I know where they're trying to get, but I'm not sure this is the right.
Yeah, and I agree with that. As this is like a lot of things we talked about last week. I understand and agree with the sentiment. It's that government is so clumsy at doing things that, one, this bill doesn't do anything. You can just cross state lines, and if you really care, I mean, if you have the money to get it done and all that stuff, you can cross state lines. It's this. We all understand the problem. What we don't agree with is the solution to the problem. And government does things so clumsily that I don't think this will have the intended effect, if that makes sense.
Well, and then there's another interesting argument in there about how they say it violates it's unconstitutional. The opponents to the bill, of course, say that it's unconstitutional because it violates the equal protection clause of access because, some people over 18 are allowed to have this procedure done. And while, you can make arguments that children are not allowed to have all kinds of things done, the argument, here's another reason that we haven't, as much as we all may feel one way or another, the courts have really not come down with a concrete thing, and it's not in code what is concrete about any of this. So whether or not this is a mandatory surgery because of a underlying mental health issue, whatever reason that may be, you're off in the weeds about you're going to get sued because you may not have access. The government is preventing you from having access to something that you claim is necessary for X, Y, and Z. Again, I'm not saying I agree with that, but it's kind of like the preemptive heartbeat bill, how it immediately just triggered a flurry of lawsuits.
Right. Well, I don't see the constitutional argument with it. You can't get new tatas at 16 years old. Doctors, but I don't know if that's state imposed or if it's within the AMA or most.
Yeah, it's not law. I mean, if your parents.
Yeah, it's just something that's not done. You don't take somebody who, first of all, is not fully grown and start messing with their body. But the other is getting new knockers is life altering. Good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's life altering, and they want you to be a decision making adult before they go and stick silicone bags in you. So I don't know. I do know we also have Delta 8 on the chopping block.
Yep. Also the Senate. If you're
keeping
following
score,
the trend, yeah, the Senate is really just screwing it all up lately. But the House, I mean, knock on wood, because we still got a ways to go, but they haven't been so bad. But this is Kay Kilpatrick from Cobb County. She also is famous on the show for her ridiculous ideas, but she wants to, quote, protect consumers and prevent THC products like Delta 8 from getting into the hands of children. She says this bill is not a ban. It's simply for us to add a process for protecting the public by testing, labeling, and protecting minors. Again, that's a parent's role to protect their minors. And what's hilarious is she talks about minors, but her bill includes testing requirements for consumable hemp products, and then sets parameters and licensing requirements for the retailers, and then codifies a ban on sales to people under 21, which my understanding of a minor is that it is 17 and under, not 18, 19, 20, and 21. But
unless you want to smoke a cigarette.
Well, yes, but I mean, she's talking about consumable hemp products.
Right. Look, the stuff that she quotes about kids taking it, generally speaking, the hemp products in food form and gummy form are packaged very differently. They also say on them what it is, and they also don't taste good. This idea that getting a weed gummy tastes like getting some Black Forest gummy bears from the grocery store, it's not true. They don't taste particularly good. Hey, look, before anybody hops on the bandwagon, I remember seeing Jell-O in the fridge one day as a kid and wanting some. But my mother, telling me, no, you can't have that Jell-O. I'll make you some other ones, because they'd had friends over the night before around the pool and had Jell-O shots. But that was parenting. No, David, you can't have that Jell-O, but I'll make you some. Or no, that's adult Jell-O. Or as my sister-in-law puts it with the boys when we go over and have a glass of wine, is that's mommy juice. Mm-hmm. That's not for you, and that's parenting. I don't know. The Republicans jump up and stomp about the Democrats wanting to take people from cradle to grave, and then they start passing laws that affect people from cradle to grave.
Well, and I really loved her comment on the bill where she said, she's a doctor, by the way, so that tells you everything you need to know, because far too many doctors are against any type of thing other than an opioid addiction. But she said, I won't mention any names, but in this body, I've had several people come up to me and tell me that they had chewed a gummy of Delta 8, and I'm not going to violate HIPAA. Okay, she doesn't apply. HIPAA does not apply to people in the legislature just walking up to her and saying, hey, I got super high off a Delta 8 gummy. But she said, I'm not going to violate HIPAA, but I will say that people are taken aback by the effects that they get from these products. And in fact, nobody really knows what they're getting when they have these products. So this is, for me, a public safety issue.
Look, you should not eat a Delta 8 gummy and then go drive. And I've spoken to people who've taken it and been shocked by, I was kind of out of it. Most people I know that use Delta 8 or Delta 9, because you can get Delta 9 gummies, it has to be under a certain milligram per square. They use it at the end of the day to go to sleep. They chew it up and go lay down.
And I think this part is really important because, it's supposed to be about facts, not hysteria. But there's an article by Georgia Public Broadcasting, and because Chuck Huffstetler from the Senate, he's from Northwest Georgia, he, in all his glory, said that this doesn't go far enough, and that we're handing these candies out to children and teenagers. He said, we've had a lot of calls to poison control line, ER visit, and stuff like that from people who are taking more than they should. So GPB reported what the Georgia Poison Center had received since 2018. And in 2022, they received 14 calls related to synthetic THC. 191 calls total in the last 4 years, which is like nothing. There are 10 million people who live in the state of Georgia.
All right. So the reason that people take more than they should is when consumed as an edible, THC takes a long time to hit. It takes 30 minutes to an hour. So what happens is people take one gummy and they wait 30 minutes and nothing's happening and go, well, this is bull. And they take another one. And then, an hour and a half later, they're stoned off their butts. It's the equivalent of throwing down 10 shots at one sitting and go, well, I don't feel anything yet. Well, you don't. It hasn't hit your bloodstream. With edibles, that's what happens is and this is what we find in places like Colorado and DC and California, is the number one thing that gets people in that condition is they take an edible and then take another one and take another one because they don't feel anything yet. And when it finally does hit them, they're off their ass stoned. So that's what I see as far as when people are using it. I don't see people taking one and then going to sleep as what's going on with it.
They also called these poison control lines, and then that was it. It's not like they're reporting dying.
Yeah, well,
I mean, my dog ate a bunch of vitamins one time, and I had to call the emergency line for dog poisoning, and they were like, "It's okay." I made the call, but the dog didn't die.
Well, that's the thing is one of the side effects of getting really stoned is paranoia. Is, I'm going to die. And we find that with ERs, again, in Colorado and places that have legal weed, is they get this, they start getting paranoid and get nervous and think they're going to die. And that's just simply not the case. But this is a good time to remind you that these are our opinions and not those of anyone not on the show or any respective company for which we may work, own, or otherwise associate ourselves with on a regular or irregular basis. Also, you can find other episodes and relevant stories over at thegeorgiavirtue.com. That disclaimer says you can't hold Dr. Cool accountable for the crap I say. All right, hee-haw. It's time for the mule.
Victor Anderson from Habersham County, state representative. Last week, he pushed through House Bill 121 to regulate wakeboarding and wake surfing, to prohibit the water activities from sunset to sunrise on a body of water less than 50 acres in size, on a body of water with a width less than 400 feet, when there is a dock, a pier, a boathouse, or another structure completely or partially in the water within 200 feet, and when not wearing a life jacket. So you can't do it any of these times. But if the DNR commissioner has issued a permit for a special event because, they received money, then all those safety measures are again rescinded, and you can wakeboard and wake surf during those times. So State Rep Victor Anderson is the mule, and then 174 of our 180 state reps are follow-up mules behind that wagon because they all voted for it. It passed with only 6 dissenting votes, which is embarrassing. Like, it's wakeboarding.
It's also only dangerous to the people involved. Now, look, I don't spend a whole lot of time on lakes. I'm a saltwater guy. But the time I have spent on lakes, yeah, they're annoying. Actually, jet skis are more annoying than wakeboarders. Because if I'm sitting there fishing, a jet ski will cut across your damn fishing line and keep going. Yeah, this is stupid. If you're wakeboarding without a life preserver, you're only endangering yourself. If that's the decision you make, well, sometimes bad things happen. Yeah, bad things happen because you make bad decisions. I assume that places like Lake Point, which I don't know if you've been around Lake Point, but it's a sports facility, but they have wakeboarding and stuff like that in ponds. They do competitions there. They'll have the monster team and all that stuff out there to do ski jumps and wakeboarding on a cable. I'm sure they'll pay the money to get that, but oftentimes you don't know if you're 200 feet from a pier or a dock. I mean, it's definitely the mule. Definitely the mule. Now we get to liar, liar, pants ablaze.
Yes, that would be Guyton police officer Marquise Parker. He pulled over friend of the show, Andy Harville, last week. And it's freaking hilarious, man. So he pulls Andy over. Andy goes into the gas station, gets gas, goes inside, does some stuff, comes out. When he pulled into the gas station, the officer was sitting in the next driveway, and he was at the gas station for 13 minutes or so. He goes to leave, and there's a roundabout just to the right of the exit. And so an 18-wheeler pulls up, and obviously an 18-wheeler can't zoom through a roundabout like the rest of us. So it stops, and it is literally blocking Andy's entire view of traffic coming his direction. So he's trying to turn left, so he doesn't turn. He just sits there, and he has a dash camera rolling, and he sits there. I mean, he approaches the stop sign very slowly because he's coming from the gas pump, but he rolls his car up to it, and then he is sitting for a full minute when he finally turns left onto the roadway, and he gets about 20, 30 seconds down the road and gets blue lighted by Guyton Police Department, who proceeds to come up and ask him why he ran the stop sign and ask for his license. He goes back and runs his license, and then
now he left Parker's and got stopped by a Parker.
Correct. He did.
No relation.
No relation. No. Parker's hires much better employees than Guyton Police Department. But I love Parker's. But anyway, yeah, so he comes back, and I guess he decides, he doesn't say I'm giving you a warning, he just hands the license back and says, you know, you need to be more careful. Make sure you stop at those stop signs. And Andy had been polite the whole time. Quite honestly, the officer had been polite as well, other than the fact that he was lying and violating.
Was wrong on everything besides being polite.
Right. But he says, Andy says, I have a dash camera, right? And he said, that's fine. And he was like, okay. And he said, it's a stop sign right there. So if you have a dash cam, it'll show you running. It'll show you running the stop sign. So, and Andy's like, okay. And Parker says, okay, have a good day. And he says, you too, and drives off. Well, of course, Andy, sends me a message, and I'm like, let's burn it down. Let's go. And so he requested, he already had his stop on dash cam, and that includes him getting pulled over. You can hear the audio of it, but he requested the body cam of the officer, everything too. And I believed Andy because I know he tells the truth, and we've been friends for a while now. And so that was never a question, but I had no idea that it was going to be a minute, like so blatant that he's literally just sitting there. Like another car even pulls up behind the 18-wheeler, and he has to wait for that car to go too. And it's all captured on camera. And, it just goes to show you that Guyton police will lie about anything and then blame the public and say that they're provoked and woe is me and blah,
yeah,
blah, blah.
And I watched the video, and he is, and I know he's a thorn in Guyton's side, but
he's a detractor, is what they've called us.
Yeah, the blonde bomber of Guyton. Mm-hmm. It's hard to even give this officer the benefit of the doubt. One, from the vantage point, he couldn't have seen if Andy stopped. Based on where I saw him in the video, is it possible that Officer Parker thought he rolled through it? It's possible because of the vantage point. But in my opinion, is it probable cause to make a traffic stop? No, because you could not see it. You were behind a tree. Right. From what I saw in the video is he's hidden. He's looking for speeders. I don't know why you look for speeders at a roundabout, because everybody has to slow down.
Well, that's exactly it. He's sitting there looking for someone to harass.
Right, and did he know it was his vehicle? It's possible. It's entirely possible because Guyton's not that damn big.
No, and Andy has a fairly, you can only tell it is a black truck, and I'm not going to give out a bunch of specific details about it, but
what's his tag number?
Yeah, exactly. But he has a recognizable truck, and it has sounds that are recognizable, and it's visibly recognizable, and
Oh, Andy's a redneck.
And
Andy's a redneck. Okay, I'm with him.
Andy has a unique look about him too, with his beard, and he's a big guy. Like he knew exactly who he was pulling over before he pulled him over.
Right.
Because
so
he would have never walked up to the window and said, "Good morning, I'm Officer Parker with the Guyton Police Department." You know, do you know? Like he wouldn't have started off so over the top polite too if he didn't know exactly who it was.
Yeah, and that's the thing is look, if you live in Fulton County, there's a fairly good chance that the officer stopping you doesn't know who the hell you are. If you're in Guyton, and unless it's your first day there, chances are that officer knows exactly who you are before he asks for your license.
Right.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, it was actually really fun too, because like it was so ridiculous and over the top that you couldn't believe it.
But did Parker stop in the middle of it and do a TikTok and dance?
No, and I think it has to do with the fact that he's not the beloved TikTok officer.
Oh, well, no, I know. I understand.
He doesn't have the following, so it wouldn't be worth it, you know?
But yeah, that one was... maybe he was hoping that your buddy would be a peckerhead about it. Maybe he was hoping for an excuse and didn't get it. It was handled professionally on both sides. But yeah, the Officer Parker was wrong. One, two. There's no way he could have seen somebody not stopping, which is crazy to me. Is you didn't stop a stop sign. No, you mean the stop sign was out for like 5 minutes? Mm-hmm. So yeah, he handled it perfectly. It's just it was one of those things where you watch it like the only motivation could possibly be intimidation, which is stop you and let you know we're watching you and give you a warning.
Yep, pretty much.
All right, Jess. As I spent way too long talking about my favorite subject, myself, we come down to your closing thought.
I just wanted to remind or announce to people, I guess, that if you have not seen the video of whether it's a clip, the full thing, as much as you can possibly find, because I assure you, if you find one, you're going to be like, I need to see more. If you have not seen the video of the grand jury foreperson from the Fulton County Trump inquiry with show favorite Fannie, as Dave called her, Willis, you need to go find her video. She did this like coy schoolgirl giddy interview about Trump, and I don't want to spoil it because I don't want to say too much about it if you haven't seen it, because I could never do it justice because I don't talk like that. But she talks like she's summarizing a date she had the night before. And it's a show. I'm concerned that her fellow jurors picked her because they voted for her to be the foreperson. So if you haven't found it, I will link it in the show. But if you haven't watched it, you need to go watch it because it is just incredible.
Oh, it's cringe. I mean, I'm guessing she got the job as foreperson because nobody else wanted it.
Perhaps.
But yeah, it is everything bad about talking to a teenage girl.
Mm-hmm. Other than she didn't do that, but she did everything else.
Yeah, it's not as bad. The two words I hate put together are like literally.
Literally, yes.
No, like literally.
I know.
We'll put the two of them together. Like, are we talking about a simile or are we talking about something literal? But yeah, it's everything bad about talking to a teenage girl, and yeah, It's also one of the things that when I see younger contestants on Jeopardy, when they have the upspeak, everything sounds like a question, annoys the living piss out of me. But yeah, that video is worth a view, and if it's on the Georgia Virtue, definitely click on it. It's worth seeing. It's worse than The Office with Office used cringe sort of comedy. Which I'm not a fan of, but the whole thing was just if you have any faith in the grand jury system, this will destroy it.
It's bad.
Yeah. Well, I don't have much of a closing thought. My opening thought took up half the damn show, and I'm sorry. So
Don't be
for
sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm not sorry to the cancelers. For Eric Cumby, our editor, who turns our awful audio into something you can listen to, for Jessica Salagi, my partner in this endeavor, I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.
I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. They sing on a sleepless night. Try to catch me howling at the moon.